One of the Bulls' possible trade and maybe even free agent targets next summer has just gotten one step closer to being available for the Chicago Bulls and Walker Kessler. We'll talk about that. We're also talk about why a trade for Ayo Dosunmu or Coby White is unlikely for the Houston Rockets, even though not impossible. And the Bulls announced several staff changes, and we're going to discuss why Matas Buzelis was just picked to be the breakout player next season. We're going to get into all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And the possibility of acquiring Walker Kessler just got one step closer for the Chicago Bulls. We're going to talk about the different options there, but reportedly, Walker Kessler and the Utah Jazz have ended their the possibility of signing a contract extension before the October 20th deadline, which will make him a restricted free agent in the summer of 2026. Now, this does not mean that the Utah Jazz still cannot possibly sign him, but reportedly, the Jazz right now, they did put a former offer on the table during, the offseason meetings, and the two sides never even came close to a deal. This is a little bit different. I know people, especially I know Bulls fans are going to say, well, hey, isn't this similar to Josh Giddey? Keep in mind, Josh Giddey and the Bulls didn't even talk extension before the season. They knew and understood they weren't going to reach anything before the deadline. They didn't even get close to talking on an extension at all. But, I mean, he's still going to be a restricted free agent, so that possibility still is out there, right? But the fact that they've shut down this, it does mean that right now, even though the Jazz reportedly highly value Walker Kessler, they're prioritizing cap flexibility in the summer of 2026 for free agency. And so even they will maintain this cap hold of $14.9 million, during their offseason, but they're looking at that while they conduct their offseason business. Now, the reason why I say this gets one step closer either way is that, reportedly the Utah Jazz have, turned away trade offers, even though they have listened to it. Now, it came out yesterday that, reportedly if the Lakers were interested, they want Austin Reeves and 2 first-round picks. But the Lakers don't even have 2 first-round picks to give with the way that the Stepien rule works. But it does kind of set a price. They want a young player and possibly 2 first-round picks. Now, will they take protections on those picks? That's a thing, right? So theoretically, the Chicago Bulls could try to get Walker Kessler in a trade. And I've seen people say, okay, Ayo Dosunmu, the Portland pick, and then our own pick in 2027, right? And my thought process on that is that with the Jazz kind of already showing their hand, right? They are a team that want to kind of avoid, getting into the luxury tax with where they are. And they already showed their hand is that they want to be players in restricted free agency. Here's my standpoint. This makes it more likely the Bulls may not acquire Walker Kessler in the middle of the season. I'm perfectly fine with that. But I do think this with the Bulls, unless they do address their center in the draft, keep in mind that the draft comes before free agency. So maybe the Bulls do make a move to go out there and get a guy like that, right? In the draft. But if the Bulls decide not to, right, and they decide to go different position at the draft or best player available again at the draft, whatever that is, right, and they more so try to focus the center in free agency, to me, this actually could put the Bulls in a position to actually do something that they haven't done before. Now, that means that it's probably unlikely that it's going to happen, but if the Bulls wanted to play hardball with the Utah Jazz and say, hey, you want your cap flexibility, we're about to sign Walker Kessler to a $25 million offer sheet here, which then that means that your money is tied up. Like, what are you going to do at that point, right? You have to make a decision. I think, 3 days now? You have to make a decision on your restricted free agent if you're going to match the offer sheet or not, which means that, the Bulls can make that offer early into free agency. And then if for some reason, the Utah Jazz do match it, they can then pivot to one of the other center options that's going to be out there, Mark Williams or, Jalen Duren, who's another restricted free agent. They can pivot, but they'd have to make that decision early. But it would put some pressure on the Utah Jazz to say, all right, you want to avoid this luxury tax? Let's see how much you want to avoid it. Now, for what it's worth, the Utah Jazz aren't dangerously close to the luxury tax either. For example, they are $51 million beneath the first tax apron this year, $105 million next year. And when you look at like players that they could potentially have to extend, they don't really have a lot in that. So it's not like they have players that they have to extend, but I do think, listen, they just signed a player like Mo Bamba, right? Who's 27 years old. To me, that indicates, hey, if we do end up trading or dealing a center this year, we have another young one kind of in the wings there. So, we'll see. Now, I'm not against the Bulls trying to trade for Walker Kessler. It's just if their asking price is a young player and 2 first-round picks, I just don't see the Bulls matching that. And I'd be willing to give up 1 first-round pick. And the reason why I'd be willing to give that up is because with that first-round pick, you're trying to find a player like Walker Kessler who fits your timeline, only 24 years old. So I'm not against them giving up a pick for a player like Walker Kessler. The question is that what they're going to be, willing to do, or are they just going to wait it out? And I think when the team that already has a free agent has already basically shown their hand and said, hey, we're prioritizing cap flexibility right now over re-signing a guy who could get a pretty large contract. To me, what that says then is that, they're looking at the money thing, right? And so, that's something. You got players like Taylor Hendricks who are due extensions in the next couple of years. While they don't have anybody next summer that's big up due for an extension, they do have players that are coming up that are due for extensions here over the next couple of years. Keontae George, another player that is up for an extension here in the summer of 27, a restricted free agent. So those are some things that the Jazz could have to look at, and especially if they feel like they have a center or a big man. Keep in mind, they already have $46 million for the next 2 years. Each of the next 2 years, it goes up to $53 million in the last year, that deal for Lauri Markkanen tied up. So I think this just, it increases the possibility. It's still, I won't say make it overall likely that the Bulls trade for Walker Kessler, but that restricted free agency, that's what's going to be interesting to see, because if they do not move Walker Kessler, and with more teams having cap flexibility next season, it gets very, very interesting in how if a team does see, and that's why I've said before, I don't see restricted free agency playing out next year like it did this year, right? I think the restricted free agents that you have, the positions that they're at, there are going to be teams with cap space that are willing to put pressure on their incumbent teams and say, all right, you're going to have to show us that you really want to keep this guy, because if not, we about to put money on the table. And that's what they're going to have to look at. Now, keep in mind, the Bulls do have more cap space than the Utah Jazz technically next year. The Bulls are $122 million slated to be beneath the first tax apron next season. And so that affords them the flexibility with that. So we'll see. If the Utah Jazz really want to keep Walker Kessler, I think they're going to find themselves either having to offer him a deal early and just maxing him out, or they're going to have to deal with teams really being willing to put an offer. Now, will that be the Bulls? That remains to be seen. But I tell you what I envision, if you find a way to keep Ayo, right? And I'm not just to say that Ayo's the end-all be-all, but if you have Ayo, let's say you do re-sign Isaac Okoro as well at the end of next year, and you then have Matas Buzelis. Hopefully at that point, Noah has done what Matas did, and we're looking at Noah as a starter going into the 2026-27 season, and you are able to add Walker Kessler to that, that would be the Bulls flipping, possibly, right? We got to see how Noah Essengay is going to be as a shot blocker in the NBA. But you're talking about shot blockers in Matas, who led the Bulls in shot blocking. Noah Essengay, who one of his best skills, in the draft was his shot blocking, and Walker Kessler as your 3, your 4, and your 5. I don't know what they're going to do offensively, right? Matas, we're going to see if he takes another step offensively. Noah, we're hoping that he's going to round out his offensive game. But if you have Matas, Noah, and Walker Kessler as your 3, 4, and 5, the Bulls' shot blocking problem goes from a deficit to a possible strength for the Chicago Bulls, if that's the case and you're able to get that level of shot blocker in here to pair with your young guys. And keep in mind, Walker Kessler will only be 25 years old that season. So you have 22-year-old Josh Giddey, or 23-year-old Josh Giddey going into the 26-27 season, 26-year-old Coby White, 21-year-old Matas Buzelis, right, if I'm not mistaken, 20-year-old Noah Essengay, 25-year-old Walker Kessler. And the offense-defense dynamic potentially of that lineup puts you in a more advantageous position than what you are in right now. And the defensive upside of that team, the defensive ceiling of that team may almost match where the offense has been, right? And so it could offer a sizable shift. Now, the thing is, when things make this much sense on paper, they very rarely ever happen. And so I'm not going to expect for it to happen for the Chicago Bulls, but it does offer an intriguing possibility for this Bulls team. You guys can let me know how you feel on that down below. With that said, let's move into the next topic, right? I want to talk about this. So, of course, the Houston Rockets lost Fred VanVleet for basically the entirety of the year. They're reporting it as a possibility that he's going to be out the whole year, which, I mean, I guess if he has a really good recovery on that ACL, he may be able to be back by the playoffs, maybe, right? Which puts it around March or April. That gives him a long leash there. But more than likely, he's done for the season. And so they are going, they could eventually look to pivot and look for a point guard. A lot of people commonly went to, they're going to try to reach out for Coby White. And I talked about it as, well, I think Ayo Dosunmu is kind of a more fit for the closer replication of what Fred VanVleet did. And he's not nearly as proven as Fred VanVleet, right? And so it could be Ayo. Both Ayo and Coby have very reasonable contracts. And they're kind of easy to move if a trade were to materialize, where it could be easy for the Rockets to match. And then at that point, but the thing is I don't see the Houston Rockets being willing to give up what I think the Bulls value with either one of those players, right? And I think this is a couple of reasons why I don't think Coby or Ayo would be on the way to the Houston Rockets. Yes, Coby White's contract, $12.8 million, very easy for the Houston Rockets to match. Ayo Dosunmu's contract this season of $7.5 million, even easier to match for the Houston Rockets if they wanted to take a shot at either one of those players, which, because then they're not taking a large financial hit on the initial trade and don't have to match a lot, which means the Bulls could maybe get back a better pick, which, I'm not mad at the Bulls entertain it or whatever else, but you got to look at the Houston Rockets cap situation. Right now, they are slated to be $86 million over the salary cap, which does leave them $68 million beneath the first tax apron. But that team gets dangerously close to it when you got to keep in mind they're more than likely going to be trying to extend Kevin Durant. Now, while Kevin Durant and Houston have both said they're not going to extend Kevin Durant at the max, Kevin Durant reportedly isn't even looking for the max. He's getting paid $54 million right now. But you got to look at it. If Kevin Durant even takes a $14 million salary, give that back hit and signs a $40 million contract, then that still only leaves them $28-ish million to play with beneath the first tax apron, which then they still would have to make decisions. Fred VanVleet has a $25 million player option. In that one, they would still have to field a lot of teams. Tari Eason is also a restricted free agent. Again, they could give up Tari Eason in that trade, but you look at that. But then they also would have 5 roster spots that they would have to fill in with basically only, you're looking at slightly over $20 million to do that in. And all that is a bunch of ifs, right? Kevin Durant could take a pay cut to $42 million, right? Which gets that even less of money for them to deal with. So I think the salary that Coby White, for example, is looking for, the salary of nearly over $30 million reportedly, I just don't think that the Houston Rockets then would be willing to get that, right? And they're probably going to get Tari Eason for much less than that if they do decide to hold on to Tari Eason. So you're running into that part of it as well. So I just don't see the Houston Rockets being involved in a Coby White trade. Now, Ayo Dosunmu. The question is how much is Ayo going to want? We haven't really heard very much on how much Ayo and his camp could potentially want on a contract extension, but let's just say it's reasonably between $16 and $18 million. Even if they did that trade, right? And let's say Tari Eason is involved in that trade. They re-signed Kevin Durant for $40 million, leaves them $28. If Ayo Dosunmu was looking for $16 to $18 million, that leaves him $12 million to fill out 3 to 4 roster spots. I don't see the Houston Rockets doing that. And keep in mind, they are one of those teams that do stay below the salary cap, stay below the luxury tax. So I just don't see the move happening. Now, again, weirder things can happen. They could dump off salary elsewhere. They could take a look. They have tons of draft. And that's another thing, too. You got to look at the Houston Rockets and the draft capital that they have coming in as well, right? They have, they have a first-round pick coming in next year. So because of that, then, they also got to look at that. And even going into 2027, where they do have more restricted free agents coming off the board, they have 3 potential first-round picks in that draft. So there's a lot of things right now that are up in the air. And because of that, I don't know if the Houston Rockets want to make that move, right? And so I get it. It's fun to talk about, and it is still reasonable to talk about because it is a possibility. But I don't think that all of a sudden the Houston Rockets are going to change their salary structure or their plans for Coby White or Ayo Dosunmu. I think that the Houston Rockets are going to try to first look internally in trying to fix the point guard situation, and then they may look at some other options. Now, one could also say, Hayes, well, they could try to get Coby White this year and just not re-sign him. Yeah, but then that's giving up some serious assets for a player that then you're not going to keep, right? So that's another thing that plays a part into this also. So I just wanted to talk about that because I know a lot of people have asked about it, have talked about it. Vaughn has already worked the trade machine on it. I just don't necessarily see it happening, right? But let's move on from that to the next one. Matas Buzelis has been named as the Chicago's breakout player of the year, saying this, right? This is from Clutch Points saying this. The Chicago Bulls haven't had a young player generate this much excitement since Derrick Rose returned home as the #1 overall pick in 2028. I got to fight against that a little bit. I think people forget the hype around Lauri Markkanen after his rookie year. I think people really forget that. I think this is the most hype since Lauri. Like, I'm not saying Lauri's hype was as high as Derrick Rose. It wasn't. And I don't think Matas's hype reached that level either, right? So I think people forget how hyped people were on Lauri Markkanen after his rookie year, very solid rookie year. But they're going to say this. Now, 17 years later, the franchise once again looks to a hometown product as its potential savior. Matas Buzelis, the 6'10 forward who was selected with the number 11th overall pick in the 2024 draft, enters a sophomore season with sky-high expectations. After an uneven rookie year that saw him oscillate between flashes of brilliance and long stretches of inconsistency, Buzelis finds himself in the spotlight as the Bulls look to chart a new course for the franchise. Buzelis' combination of size, skill, and scoring touch gives him an edge over many second-year players. At 6'10", he moves with fluidity of a guard while possessing the length of a forward. He's not a traditional shot creator, but in the system with Giddey orchestrating and White spacing the floor, Buzelis can thrive as a secondary scorer. If his three-point shot ticks up to 38%, a realistic leap given his metrics, he could easily become a double-digit nightly scorer who punishes defenses inside and out. And I don't disagree with any of that. I think they hit the nail on the head, right? Matas Buzelis very well in this season could become the Bulls' secondary scorer, right? And by that, I mean that Josh Giddey was the secondary scorer at the end of last season, and he has the ball in his hands. But we know that Josh Giddey is an amazing facilitator, and reportedly part of the reason the Bulls wanted and prioritized keeping Josh Giddey is because they felt like he is good for the development of players like Matas Buzelis, Noah Essengay, as they learn to develop and create their own shot at the NBA level, right? And so that's the thing. Like, Matas Buzelis could very well be that. I've said a lot that I've kind of tempered those expectations and more so focused on Matas making a decent step. But I think that leap comes in year 3. Now, the opportunity for a leap is going to come here for him in year 2. I think if he can turn into a secondary scorer option for the Chicago Bulls, that leap is definitely possible there. But the Bulls have Kevin Huerter. The Bulls have Josh Giddey. The Bulls have Ayo Dosunmu who can score a lot, right? So it may be secondary scorer by committee. But if we're talking about by the end of the season, Matas Buzelis adamantly is that second scoring option for the Chicago Bulls that allows Josh Giddey to do more, focus more of the playmaking and creation that he does, especially in the half court. That'll be icing on the cake for the Chicago Bulls. I do think that there's a lot of now people talking about Buzelis breaking out that I just hope it doesn't turn into disappointment if he just makes an incremental step in year 2 and then finishes that off in year 3 with the huge leap, which is where we kind of see that at year 3 or year 4 for players. But it's not like we haven't seen players make a sizable step up in year 2 either. And the opportunity is going to be there for him. Now, at the end of this article, they talk about where I want to see Matas grow the most. They say this. Defensively, he's also in prime position to shine. With Okoro and Essengay likely drawing toughest assignments, Buzelis can slide into a help role, using his length to block shots and disrupt passing lanes. His ability to guard multiple positions makes him a versatile weapon in Donovan's schemes. And if he can cut down on the fouls and stay disciplined, his defensive impact could grow significantly. I love what they said defensively because it's not talking about Matas all of a sudden becoming some lockdown defender. It's saying, hey, no, the best defensive assignments are going to go to Okoro. They did leave off Ayo. I think Ayo, I don't know how much Noah draws that in year 1, but we shall see, right? And so what Buzelis can do is to learn to be an excellent help defender in year 2. And then, like we talked about, take that next step up from being the best help defender to being a more solid all-around on-ball defender in year 3. Help defense with Matas' length, his athleticism, his activity, and the shot blocking that he does have still, as of right now, the Bulls' best shot blocker. We'll see if Noah Essengate can take that over. If Matas makes that step, the incremental step offensively, goes from 13 points as a starter, let's say he goes up to 15 points per game as a starter, but the defense, fouls go down, free throw rate goes up, forced turnovers goes up. That is a realistic goal, I think, for Matas here in year 2, and I would love to see him get that done. So we'll see. They lay out a great expectation and hope for Matas Buzelis. The thing is now is just watch to see if he can actually achieve that, and I think he's in prime position to do that. Now, last topic before we go, the Bulls have made several changes to its player development staff. Many people will know Peter Patton was fired. Then they end up firing letting go one of the analytics guys, leaving only one analytics guy, advanced analytics guy in the franchise. Well, the Bulls made several changes to organizations, right? Austin Default, who we've all known was probably going to be moved up to the director of player development to replace Peter Patton. They made that move official yesterday. He is now in charge of the player development department. He was already there. He was in the secondary role to Peter Patton. So you're keeping somebody who's already helped establish how that player development department is operated and run. He's not a shooting coach like Peter Patton, but he is an expert in player development, working out those type of things. I think that's going to be good, right? He was hired with Peter Patton to come in there, who was really respected, so that's good. And I think that the Bulls, when you look at it, like this player development department has had help in what the Chicago Bulls done as well. Coby White has really credited his improved shooting over the last 2 years with that player development department, right? And with Matas Buzelis coming in, it's really good that they have that. They also named Fazan Hasnani was named as the executive director of basketball strategy. Really good there. Joining him are going to be Burak Kancock, who's the director of basketball research and development. We got Tyrod Bihabani, who's also the senior manager of data science, which again, another analytic guy. And then Jackson Het has joined as the basketball analytics coordinator. The director Kancock, he worked with Dallas from 2021 to 2025, and Bihabani worked with the Wizards. And Het was a coaching analyst with the Marine Celtics of the G League. So that's where those guys are coming from. I know not everybody cares about those type of movements, but the Bulls are, keep in mind, the Bulls are one of only 5 franchises in the NBA that have a dedicated player development staff, right? Most teams have an assistant coach really kind of mind that. And so we still got 2 guys that were head of player development in Wes Unseld and Dan Craig, who are kind of extensions of the player development department as well. So I think the Bulls are in a pretty good place with their player development, at least the department. Now let's see how they actually continue to develop players here, and we'll see how that works out. Dalen Terry, who everybody's talking about now, is primed for a breakout season. Let's see if it happens for him. So that's my time for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.